Well, as expected, Tesla stock did well today. At the time of recording this video, up about 4.5%. It was up over 7%. So here in the last hour of trading, it could get volatile in both directions. Keep that in mind. In this video, I will share with you all of your breaking news today for Tesla, and there's actually a lot of it, so that's going to be a good chunk of this video. And some of the headlines coming out around the China-US meeting in Switzerland. I think that is also stirring up quite a bit of speculation. Okay, so part of the good news today that caused the stock at least to do well in overnight trading and then early this morning, I would think, is Steak and Shake. They say, we identify Robotaxi with Tesla. We want to deliver via Robotaxis. Ready to test Robotaxi ASAP and transform the delivery business. Also in the news today, US Foods has taken delivery of a Tesla Semi. They distribute to over 250,000 locations and restaurants within the US. New Model Y deliveries have begun in Australia. Tesla had an all-time record high number of test drives last week in that country. Now, Cathie Wood today on CNBC said, quote, our target in 5 years in 2030 is $2,600. Our confidence in that number has gone up now that Tesla is commercializing robotaxis in June. Take a listen to exactly what Cathie Wood said. It's only about a minute long.
Where are you on Tesla at this point? You've been a bull for a very, very long time. We're at $287.
Yes, well, as we have put out there, our target in 5 years, so 2030 again, is $2,600. And our confidence in that number has gone up now that Tesla is commercializing robotaxis in August, in June. What we don't have in that number, and what is happening faster than we expected, and as you know, we're very focused on learning curves and how quickly new technologies are going to evolve. Humanoid robots. And Elon has been talking about that market being bigger ultimately than the robotaxi market. And he talks about Tesla being number one globally when it comes to humanoid robots, and also says that China is number 2 to 10. So we have to get moving on that score as well. We think that's a $26 trillion revenue opportunity split between home and industrial in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be a huge market. And the reason Tesla is ahead of the game is we're talking about the three platforms it's already innovating on. Robotaxis are robots. Energy storage, they will be electric, and AI. Those are the three technologies in the humanoid robot movement as well.
And you have to say, in just a minute, she makes a pretty compelling case for Tesla. And obviously, with the stock going from $488 down to $215, back up to about $300 today, you're still down $188 per share from your all-time high. A lot of Wall Street has deemed Tesla too risky in the current environment with elevated recession odds and a trade war with China. Well, we have a meeting with Scott Bessent and Chinese officials this weekend, and there are some speculations and rumors being thrown out there of different potential outcomes. I'll share that with you in just a moment once we get through all of your Tesla stock breaking news. India is proposing to drop tariffs from 14% to under 4% in new trade talks with the US. That is good news for Tesla, who is soon to be entering the market. So that could be part of what is boosting Tesla stock today. Peter DiCarlo says, if Tesla holds over this 290 liquidity zone, we're cutting right up to 350 like a hot knife through butter. And that's kind of what the charts have been suggesting to me as well. Getting above that 200-day moving average at about 293 should send you pretty easily into the mid 300s. And there is a lot of speculation today on just the sheer size of Tesla's outperformance relative to the markets, that there is big news coming very soon. Probably a solidified date and time to start robotaxi operations, but that's just my speculation. Again, Tesla's up about 5% right now. The S&P is actually red today, down 0.1%. So the outperformance is obvious. I mean, it's a 50x outperformance from what the headline S&P is doing. Also being reported that Mazda signs the Tesla supercharger deal. Now, option activity today for Tesla is surprising considering the stock is outperforming so much. You only have 155 different trades totaling $89.34 million with a positive order value of 59%. So not a whole lot of option activity today. Short sellers are covering about 35,000 shares, so not a huge net change today. You have borrowed shares of 325,000, return shares of 360,000. So you do have 35,000 shares on net that are being returned today or being covered on. Tesla still does have a very high short interest of free float at 2.89%. $23.07 billion currently sold short in the stock, totaling about 81 million shares. So if we do get good news from this China meeting over this weekend, you're likely to see some short sellers rush to get out of short positions. And I think more broadly speaking, rush to get allocated again to markets. Retail has been buying the dip in this market. Hedge funds and institutions have been largely on the sidelines, okay, because of the risk of a recession. Now let's get into all of your broader market breaking news today. Now there's a couple big headlines today. Trump said on Truth Social that an 80% tariff on China seems right, but it's up to Scott Bessent. So saying if Bessent wants to do something, he's kind of has the reins to do so. And I think Bessent probably wants a pause on tariffs, at least for negotiations, because of the severe issues that are being caused right now. And the headline that hit the terminals was Trump 80% tariff on China seems right, which is still way higher than what is sustainable. But the latest headline that came out from the Swiss economy minister, he says it is possible that the US and China agree to a mutual suspension of customs duties for the duration of the talks. So that would be like suspending tariffs, like pausing tariffs, okay? It's coming. Let's just be honest. It is coming. If it is not, markets are going to fall. Like, I think that is the expectation. And I think that's partially why some stocks are outperforming so much today. People are kind of front running that a little bit. And I think, let's be honest, like the S&P has recovered a lot from the lows. I think this has kind of all been a front run to the pause on China tariffs. And I do think when you get that news over this weekend, you're probably going to extend higher even then. Because again, recession odds are going to plummet. Wall Street is going to need to get allocated to markets again. Hedge funds and institutions have been, sitting on the sidelines of this market, essentially. They cannot afford to do that if the trade deal with China passes or if there is a pause. They have to essentially, get allocated to markets again. Like they would not have a choice in the matter. India offers to slash the tariff gap with the US to under 4% from nearly 13% under potential trade pact. India is offering zero duties on 60% tariff lines to US compared with 3% tariff lines now under a potential pact. And India asks the US for exemption from all current and future tariffs amid trade talks. So essentially, India wants a pause on tariffs as well. Also being reported today that Germany's foreign minister will speak with Rubio. Fedbar says tariffs could create persistent upward inflation or upward pressure on inflation. And he says that he expects tariffs to lead to higher inflation and lower growth. Fedbarkin says, given economic strength, monetary policy is in a good position. And Fedbarkin says, I'm concerned that tariffs will lead to higher unemployment. So it does seem like, at least from Fed officials today, they're a little bit more concerned about the unemployment, the labor market component. And Fedbarkin says Trump's tariffs are without modern precedents. So we really just haven't seen this before. Fedbar says the Fed may be in a difficult position if both inflation and unemployment rise. So really just reiterating a lot of what Powell said yesterday. Fedbar says AI may require policymakers to reassess the natural rate of unemployment, that's something we have not heard ever before from the Fed. Chinese Premier Li Qiang says we are to step up building of a free trade zone. So this actually sounds very positive. Let me tell you why. It's simple. What did the UK do to get a trade deal? They opened up a $5 billion market to the US for beef, agriculture, ethanol, a couple other products. China, if they want to build a free trade zone and open up the country to more areas for the US to enter, that is very persuasive to get a deal with China. I mean, like, come on now. China could offer something really good and make it seem like a big win for the US and make a big win for themselves. But I do think while those talks are ongoing, starting on Saturday, starting tomorrow, you will get a pause on China tariffs. Probably tonight, if I were to imagine. Fed Kugler says Q1 GDP showed the real side of the economy is resilient. Trump says China should open up its market to the USA. Again, if that's all China has to do to get a trade deal, I'm pretty confident these talks this weekend are going to be fruitful. Trump says that closed markets don't work anymore. Trump says the GOP should not increase taxes on the rich, but it's okay if they do. Fed Kugler says economic health gives the Fed time to make progress on inflation, but he says it's unclear how tariff policy will shake out. Navarro on China trade talks says, quote, "It will be an interesting weekend for the markets." Navarro says Japan is most clever at protecting its own markets. And he says that countries are lining up to talk trade with the US. Navarro says the US will sell more beef, poultry, and dairy to the UK. And Navarro says the EU is very high on the priority list in trade talks. The Canadian unemployment rate came in at 6.9%. The forecast was 6.8%. So more weakening in Canada. Why I point that out is because the US and Canadian economies tend to go hand in hand. When employment rises in one, it tends to rise in the other. If things are good in one, it tends to be good in the other. White House senior advisor Hassett says the UK trade deal is a framework for future deals. And White House senior advisor Hassett says 24 other trade deals are closed to being resolved, or close to being resolved. And he says everything going on with the Swiss meeting with the Chinese is positive. Trump said on Truth Social, many trade deals in the hopper, all good, great ones. And Hassett says we will see a lot more deals like the UK deal in the coming weeks. And Hassett says we will know more on China tariffs after talks in Geneva. Fed Williams says, I expect growth to slow considerably and inflation and unemployment to be higher. And he says the next few quarters will help illustrate or illuminate the economy's state of affairs. The World Trade Organization spokesperson on U.S.-China trade talks in Geneva this weekend says the Director General welcomes talks as a positive and construction step towards de-escalation. China's Commerce Minister Wang says decision on U.S. trade talks is based on a full assessment. China's Commerce Ministry in their statement says Russia and China had in-depth exchange on bilateral cooperation in responding to U.S. tariffs. The Swiss president says the pause on tariffs is not to be lifted during negotiations. And then again, just almost right after, you had the finance minister that says it's possible that we could agree to a mutual suspension of custom duties for the duration of the talks. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty today. That's what I can tell you for sure. And again, nobody really knows what is going to happen, but I think the logical step would be a bilateral pause. China pauses their tariffs, we pause our tariffs, and, actually let for negotiations. Fed Bostic says the 2025 economy is to be less resilient than earlier expected. The United States and the Europeans are working to put together a proposal for a 30-day Ukraine-Russia ceasefire. And Iran reports the next round of talks with the U.S. is to take place on Sunday in Oman. The percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average today coming in at 57.1%. Moving up a little bit, 1.3% of stocks today are breaking above their 50-day moving average. So you're back to pretty much a normal level for where stocks, typically are. you're not super bullish, you're not bearish, just kind of normal. So I think there's room in either direction to get stronger or to, get worse and fade. And it really just, again, depends what happens with the talks in Switzerland over this weekend. Specifically, do we get good news? Like, we need good news. If we don't get good news by Monday, or really Sunday, but first day of trading for the new week, markets are going to fall on Monday, okay? Just keep that in mind. Now, on Thursday, yesterday, you did see the AI investor sentiment survey sharply recover from the prior week. Bullish investors going from 20.9% to 29.4%. So big move there. Neutral investors fell from 19.8% to 19.0%. And bearish investors fell from 59.3% to 51.5%. So looks like people are getting a little bit more bullish, but still like almost double the amount of bears versus bulls. Again, hedge funds and institutions, they're not super bullish on this market. They can't be super bullish on this market because of the heightened recession risk, okay? It's almost impossible to be super bullish on this market unless you just have a view that Trump's not going to push us over the edge. But if he did, you would lose your clients a lot of money, probably lose your jobs, right? So that's why there's this under positioning from Wall Street right now. CNN's Fear and Greed Index coming in at 62, which is almost midpoint of greed. Market momentum, extreme fear. Stock price strength is greed. Stock price breadth, extreme greed. Put and call options, fear. Market volatility is neutral. Safe haven demand and extreme greed. Junk bond demand, also in extreme greed. Now, the Swiss economy minister says trade talks with the Chinese addressed in bilateral. The objective is to advance quickly. So, some people even speculate there could be a trade deal announced, or the framework of a trade deal announced this weekend. So again, I think we just have to wait and see at this point. That's going to be the big catalyst that drives markets next week. How do these talks go over this weekend? If they go well, if we either have a framework for a deal or a pause on China tariffs, those are like the two things that I see at this point that would cause further upside in markets. That's great. We get upside, the bulls win. If we don't hear much, or it doesn't sound good, or there's arguments and a lack of progress, then markets are going to sell off. The fact of the matter is, we will start to see the real consequences of, pausing trade with China over the coming weeks. And that's going to hit inflation. That's going to start to hit jobs. That's where the recession or depression risks start to really rise. So we're not quite there yet. There's still time to avert disaster or crisis, but we're approaching that faster than most would like. Let me know what you guys think about this down below in the comment section. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.